Hello. This is me doing my last minute adjustments. Here we go. Over here. There we are. What a beautiful reading nook. Everything has gone wrong, as is pure bad squiddo. So hello, everybody who is here. I am the bear. I can't find the thing to let you set where the angles are beforehand, but here we are. So hopefully you are very cozy. And here am I, the bear. And I have, I'll just do my usual preamble. So I work with Joe Brumby quite a bit. He is a sculptor and he's a man of many talents. And he writes books. So I have here the manuscript for his next book, which is not published yet. So it's brand new, super brand new. And I just wanted to read it out. It's wicked. So we're going to read part of it tonight and then part of it tomorrow night. And obviously you can watch this back too. I'm distracted by my own bear. I like this. I'm going to be a full-time bear. And it's age appropriate for all ages. And what else before we start? So I'll just give it a few minutes before people trundle in. It's not. I'm not commercially affiliated with this in any way. That usual sort of stuff. I just really like it. I love the way he writes. I think it's really fun, and I love reading stories and being a bear. So I thought I'd be a bear and read you some story. Of course, my really cool way of binding it didn't work, so it's in clip form. Comfy for our read. Yeah. Let's get everything up. Be a bear. I have the lovely ambient lighting. I have a pig here. A little squiddo that was knitted by one of my fans. Thank you very much. I've got a pig, a cappy, and a baggie. So let me get settled into being a bear. I've got to keep my bear up. I'll be able to see too. So I hope you are sitting comfortably. I hope you have your cocoa for your nighttime story with Annie. So this is The Small Tall Tales of Wyrdworld by the Brothers Brum, which is Joe and Ian Brumby. And they have, I'm sure they will be here, putting some links in the comments as well. They've built their whole world, Wyrdworld. It makes sense when you see a few more of the Fenris sculpts. That's all part of this enormous land they've created over the years. So this is book 1 of the Small Tales of Magic, Myths, and Mucky Boots. So let us begin. I'll be able to see out from my bear. Before we begin, you know, no doubt, these noted Grimms, a very famous pair, of whose great stock of fairy tales we're sure you're well aware. It would be nice to make the claim, if we could have our druthers, of having a household name as those immortal brothers. But as of yet, our surname is unheard of in society. Perhaps instead of simple fame, we might try notoriety. So don't get too comfy as you're sitting on your bum. Here comes the first of many from the beastly Brothers Brum. Chapter 1. Welcome to Wyrdworld. Let us take you to a world that's quite a bit like yours. Though here, it's clear, most animals don't travel on all fours. Instead, they walk on two, or some on wheels, or yet on crutches. But first and foremost, none are housed in cages or hutches. They work and play, they sing and dance, they like to laugh and joke. In other words, they're really just quite ordinary folk. There's antelopes and dogs and cats, and marmosets and moose. There's elephants and mice and rats, and now and then a goose. Yes, animals of every sort, including humans too. Though like the apes and monkeys, these are relatively few. Nonetheless, it seems they all get on quite well together, happy to discuss the news and talk about the weather. They have themselves a range of roles, like warriors and wizards. They don't rely on cars or planes, but ride around on lizards. It's quite an oldie-worldy place. You'll never see a telly. and thanks to all the lizard poo, it can get rather smelly. Another thing you'll notice in its tale and its telling is how in certain places we've been strange about our spelling. It's not really important though. The meanings are unchanged. The words aren't really different, just otherwise arranged. The primary examples are our earth and its magic. Earth with you. The differences, as you see, are hardly very tragic. Whatever others might be seen, let's worry never after, and get on with this story as it goes from daft to dafter. Perhaps most strange and odd of things in all this world's making is how its people come to be. It's quite an undertaking. They're made, you see, by clever dwarves who carve them all from stone, and then, by special magic means, they're turned to flesh and bone. The dwarves, for reasons yet unknown, may well look quite peculiar. They're uniformed in bunny suits, but never let that fool you. For though they might seem warm and soft, they're quite a sturdy bunch. They'll work right through from dawn till dusk without a break for lunch. It's in my bear. Leave my bear. There we are. A nice bear. Hello, everybody who's joined. They're experts in their stony art. There's none to match their talents. They make enough of everything to keep the earth in balance. You can't have too many kangaroos or carve too many foxes. That's why the bunny dwarves in blue are always ticking boxes. They always keep a record book of every sculpted person to make sure any early faults don't get a chance to worsen. In summary, that's how they make the people of this place a fact for every being here, of every shape and race. Each one of them is plonked upon their destined little way, and all of this without a chance of having had their say. Instead, they have to find their path and choose which turns to take, and hope that hostile enemies don't follow in their wake. So thus begins each person's life, the story of their fate, and some of these will now become the tale we relate. But first we should inform you, before we really start, that as with many stories, this one has a fouler part. Chapter 2, The Monster. If you're watching live, can you give us a thumb up, because that will help. Chapter 2. There seems in every tale like this, there has to be a villain, and this one in particular will set your heart a-chillin'. In one dark cave, and quite alone, in solitude and silence, another dwarf has carved a beast, whose name meant blood and violence. But not by choice. His consciousness by malice had been taken, enthralling him within a trance from which he couldn't awaken. It seemed to him that someone else was using him and all his tools to make a monster mostly known for breaking all the rules. Why anyone would want to resurrect it was a mystery. Its gruesome, gory legend was the worst in monster history. It was a thing of nightmare, the primordial marauder. Its status as a wrong'un really couldn't be much broader. The stories say it was a creature wrought by grim biology, not even real, a phantom from a bogeyman mythology. A monster's gonna get your tale to keep your kids on track, an ever-constant shadow horror lurking at their back. A Grendel, bugbear, runegate, the quintessential baddie, to all intents and purposes, a very naughty laddie, a mean, malicious character who's rotten to his roots, the sort who'd sneak into your house and whittle in your boots. His burps could knock a door down, and his breath could wilt the flowers. His trumps could take the paint off walls and stink you out for hours. His grin could crack a mirror, and his big right eye was weird. For which most folks decreed he was a fellow to be feared. Declaring that he was a thing most uglyful of feature, that ever should be known as earth's most awful creature. This is, of course, quite wrong to do, to judge one on their looks. There's wisdom in that proverb, serving covers and their books. We shouldn't think that evil is defined by someone's face, or that they should be gauged by their complexion or their race. It's truer that most nastiness and other sorts of sin aren't manifested physically, nor written on their skin. If someone's course of countenance, consider for a second, it could turn out they're really rather nicer than you reckoned. Alas, although that's mostly true, there are some rare exceptions. Our monster here is all too pleased to play to such perceptions. Though rough indeed of feature now, that isn't why he's rotten. His creature's course was cursed before he'd even been begotten. And though, through his misspent younger years, he showed no heed of morals, forever mixing mischiefs and inciting fights and quarrels, he fought with every scar-less one, that folk feared what they saw. And so, with every chance he got, he sought to earn some more. He'd act upon the bias that such markings made him meaner, and that by merely being different determined his demeanour. He'd readily exploit the fear that folk felt for his face, and bring 'em down a peg or two and put 'em in their place. That is to say, this character enjoys his reputation and relishes the fact his features cause such consternation. He's fiercely fond of finding superstitious silly billies and showing them his monstrous mug and giving them the willies. He revels in the look of fear he's able to provoke when leaping at you from the dark. He's such a nasty bloke. But now we must profess to count ourselves ashamed for writing such a great long mess of one as yet unnamed. We've spent too long already making much of his arrival, his new to earth nativity, and back from death revival. We certainly did not intend such focus on this creature, but as our stories scape grace, he was bound to be a feature. It's certain we could spin a tale, though for now we'll save you, awash with all his awful acts and horrible behaviour. With this much blather on his part, his ears must be burning. Let's have no more, at least not here. He's sure to be returning. Just one last verse to send him off, and then we'll call that it. His name is Snurg, the ogre. He's a proper horrid git. And now we've broken free, somewhat, of monstery disruption. We'll try to move ahead without much further interruption. A change in mood, a shift in tone, to chase away the night, to banish horrors for a while, and lift us to the lights. Chapter 3. Friends and Enemies. Away then to adventure and pursuit of finer things, where though there may be fairy feet, there'll be no lords of rings. For such a yarn, we'd better have some character components to carry out heroics or to deal with fierce opponents. So here for you, we now have two to complement our fable. Let's see what skills this lively pair are bringing to the table. Our first is of a peaceful heart. His name is Fulto Brim. He's very often deep in thought, in spite of seeming dim. His noggin cogs are frequently engaged upon a spell. He's owing to such patience that he does it all quite well. If you should need a personage with brains and wit, he got him. He's also got quite gazumptious arms and quite a hairy bottom. In short, he's an orangutan, though taller than he looks. He likes to exercise his mind and lose himself in books. His magic comes from Mother Earth, a nature goddess, almost a garish pantheon. She's relatively modest. Perhaps we'll see a sample of the wonders Fulton knows, and hope it's not just limited to fancy fireworks shows. But for now, we'll venture on to somewhere else besides, perhaps to find another friend. Let's see what fate provides. Before too long, we chance upon a hamster on the trail. He's searching for adventure, but as yet to no avail. His given name is Hengist, and that's all we know about it. It suits him rather well, and so there's little need to doubt it. He's bristling with weaponry and quite prepared for trouble. Wherever there's a foe to fight, he's in there at the double. He's bristling. At present, though, he's grumbling about the lack of action and wondering where next to find some scrappy satisfaction. His brain's on autopilot, and he's following his feet. His stomach keeps reminding him it must be time to eat. Though, actually, the feeling that is setting in his belly has made him go all wobbly, and his legs have turned to jelly. Across the earth, the tawny ape is feeling much the same, and wondering if all of this is someone's silly game. Although the two are far apart, they both are thus enchanted by this strange and special spell. They find themselves transplanted. This dizzying experience, like many things they're learning, shows Earth to be a place of much that's strange and stomach-churning. They reappear in unison, and thankfully indoors, inside a cave with shiny walls and highly polished floors. They only have a little time to gauge their situation before another magic flash brings further complication. The ogre, Snurg, has also been transported from wherever, and none of them has a clue why they're all together. As if by magic, poof, just like that, a bunny dwarf appears. His fursuit's blue from toe to top, and yes, of course, the ears. It's very clear the dwarf is shocked to find this ogre present. He's pretty sure that nobody called for something so unpleasant. In spite of this, he soldiers on, a stickler for commands, enlightening the trio as to what their quest demands. It seems the sculptor Sigurd, who is common to all three, has gone amiss while out on leave and left no trail to see. The three are bound to track him down and bring him back alive. The other dwarves uncertain as to how he might survive. They're not exactly outdoor types, preferring to remain within their safe and cosy caves, away from all the rain. In any case, the fateful troop are set upon their way, and duly teleported for the second time that day. The man in blue, his name is Thor, examines his machines to ascertain how Snurg got in and what his presence means. Upon a screen, another dwarf demands to know right now why Thor has let the ogre go and brought it here, and how. But Thor has at best can only guess what unearthly force has brought the monster into play and thrown their plans off course. "I'm very sorry, ma'am," he said it most sincere. "I thought it best to send him out and keep our caverns clear." The senior dwarf let out a sigh. He knew that Thor was right, that Snurg would be much better out of mind and out of sight. She faded out, but then returned with something more to say. "Perhaps when this is over, we should send him on his way. I'd rather not take any risk of having him here. So when you bring the others back, just make him disappear." Thor nodded that he understood. Then as his boss departed, he turned to face his monitor to get the mission started. He logged the information for the relevant vicinity, then settled to the study for the voyage of the Trinity. Chapter 4, The Great Outdoors. And so the trio, thus departed, arrived where they were bound, transported from the dwarven caves to rather higher ground. They'd landed on a mountain on a ledge about halfway. This wasn't really offering much promise for the day. To deal with the altitude, they'd need to find a rope and make it slightly easier to clamber down the slope. Their luck was in. The hamster had a coil of hempy stuff that by a bit of reckoning should be about enough. The ogre, though, was not impressed. The rope was much too slight. It wouldn't help a beast his size get down from such a height. Instead, he said he'd keep an eye on where an ape and a hamster went, then somehow find another way to make his own descent. To this, the others both agreed, quite happy to be free of any time spent climbing with a monster such as he. So while the ogre went to look for safer climbing spots, the hamster duly tied his rope and tested all the knots. As Hengist scuttled down the rope and made it look quite easy, poor Fulto said the thought of it was making him quite queasy. But even so, eventually he managed to descend, relieved to put his feet down and rejoin his little friend. Then, once they gathered all their wits, they moved towards the greenery. With one last look back up the cliff, they stepped into the scenery. Back on the rock, the ogre was deciding who to blame for bringing him from where he was to put him in this game. He hated being dragged around like someone else's slave. Those dwarves weren't going to like it when he got back to their cave. But meanwhile, he decided that he might as well concede to dealing with this present mess and where it all might lead. So to that end, he lumbered back towards the rocky edge, where Hamster and Orangutan had climbed down from the ledge. He did without the hamster's rope. It really was too weak, instead of employing hands and feet to get down to the peak. From the peak. It took a rather long time because of this decision. The ogre forced to make his climb with rather more precision. He reckoned it was about half an hour before he reached the ground to put his big great boots on and have a look around. Abandoning the cliff had clearly taken him astray. He grumbled, knowing that he'd have to walk back all that way. Resigned to that, he set his mind to working out the doings of this odd world and its eccentric to and fro and toings. Let's leave him to his figurings and find the other two. See if they've made progress or have worked out what to do. Indeed, amongst the jungly stuff, a stinky thing's been found. A strongly aromatic structure buried in the ground. It's jutting from the banking of a dried up river runnel. It's blocked for now, but that might make for a serviceable tunnel. And so the perspicacious pair began to scout about for sticks or other useful things to dig the blockage out. They've soon begun upon their task of cleaning out the pipe and very, very quickly realise that the air is getting ripe. So here's a lesson, reader, in the content of our verse. Be cautious as you problem solve, because you might find something worse. When life presents its blockages, don't dig before you think. You might soon find you're deeply mired in muck and filth and stink. Just such a fate befell our friends. That as they tunnelled through. The ordinary dirt became a slush of number 2. It was very much now looking as if they'd have to trudge around a maze of mucky tunnels full of pooey sludge. Perhaps we'd better leave them here to manage this ordeal and save ourselves from wonderings of how much such filth must feel. Let's get back to the other bloke and see what he's been doing. Perhaps he's found the settlements, or maybe trouble's brewing. But no, it seems that all he's done, in all the time that's passed, is walk about a mile or so. You'd hardly call it fast. We really must pick up the pace. This poem might get boring. Let's hope something happens soon, or else we'll all be snoring. Fortunately, to that end, there comes a strange new sound. That perks the ogre's interests up and makes him look around. There behind him on the road, a cheerful little man who's singing to his lizards as they pull his caravan. Along, my little lizard lads, let's bring our wagon home. We've done our day at market, so let's get back to Frome. We've made a pretty penny, and we've spent a few as well. We've rid ourselves of everything we took down to sell. Along, my little lizard lads, let's bring our wagon home. We've done our day at market, so let's get back to Frome. We've spent our coin, we've bought our goods, we've traded and we've sold. So let's get home to Frome, sweet Frome, and count up all our gold. Along, my little lizard lads, sing along, let's bring our wagon home. We've done our day at market, and there's a page missing. Oh no! Well, that will be the end of today, as there appears to be 10 pages missing. Oh dear. That's amazing. So, I was going to try and do it in one lot actually, but we have a big gap. So, I was getting into that. So that's good, because that leaves us at half an hour. I hope you fully enjoyed this. I won't ramble on too much after, because some people will watch it back. So the second part will be tomorrow, and we will not. At least I noticed the page numbers. That would have been awful if I'd not. So we will conclude our tale tomorrow at 6 p.m. The rest of the story. I hope you've had a brilliant time watching. And if you came to this later, you can watch it back from the start. And we will find out what happens with this funny little man and his lizard lads. I'll see you all tomorrow at 6. Be there, find the rest. Bye. And find the end button.